Part 1. Grabbing Hold. The Courtship. On December 14, 1992, I had just returned from one of those always well-intentioned but rarely stimulating charity dinners that are part of a New York City CEO's life, including mine as CEO of RJR Nabisco. I had not been in my Fifth Avenue apartment more than 5 minutes when my phone rang with a call from the concierge desk downstairs. It was nearly 10 p.m. The concierge said, "Mr. Burke wants to see you as soon as possible this evening." Startled at such a request so late at night in a building in which neighbors don't call neighbors, I asked which Mr. Burke, where is he now, and does he really want to see me face to face this evening? The answers were, Jim Burke. He lives upstairs in the building. And, yes, he wants very much to speak to you tonight. I didn't know Jim Burke well, but I greatly admired his leadership at Johnson & Johnson, as well as at Partnership for a Drug-Free America. His handling of the Tylenol poisoning crisis years earlier had made him a business legend. I had no idea why he wanted to see me so urgently. When I called, he said he would come right down. When he arrived, he got straight to the point. "I've heard that you may go back to American Express as CEO, and I don't want you to do that because I may have a much bigger challenge for you." The reference to American Express was probably prompted by rumors that I was going to return to the company where I had worked for 11 years. In fact, in mid-November 1992, 3 members of the American Express board had met secretly with me at the Sky Club in New York City to ask that I come back. It's hard to say if I was surprised. Wall Street and the media were humming with speculation that then CEO Jim Robinson was under board pressure to step down. However, I told the 3 directors politely that I had no interest in returning to American Express. I had loved my tenure there, but I was not going back to fix mistakes I had fought so hard to avoid. Robinson left 2 months later. I told Burke I wasn't returning to American Express. He told me that the top position at IBM might soon be open and he wanted me to consider taking the job. Needless to say, I was very surprised. While it was widely known and reported in the media that IBM was having serious problems, there had been no public signs of an impending change in CEOs. I told Burke that, given my lack of technical background, I couldn't conceive of running IBM. He said, "I'm glad you're not going back to American Express. And please, keep an open mind on IBM." That was it. He went back upstairs, and I went to bed thinking about our conversation. The media drumbeat intensified in the following weeks. Business Week ran a story titled, "IBM's Board Should Clean Out the Corner Office." Fortune published a story, "King John Akers, the chairman and CEO, wears an uneasy crown." It seemed that everyone had advice about what to do at IBM, and reading it, I was glad I wasn't there. The media, at least, appeared convinced that IBM's time had long passed. The search. On January 26, 1993, IBM announced that John Akers had decided to retire and that a search committee had been formed to consider outside and internal candidates. The committee was headed by Jim Burke. It didn't take long for him to call. I gave Jim the same answer in January as I had in December. I wasn't qualified and I wasn't interested. He urged me, again, keep an open mind. He and his committee then embarked on a rather public sweep of the top CEOs in America. Names like Jack Welch of General Electric, Larry Bossidy of Allied Signal, George Fisher of Motorola, and even Bill Gates of Microsoft surfaced fairly quickly in the press. So did the names of several IBM executives. The search committee also conducted a series of meetings with the heads of many technology companies, presumably seeking advice on who should lead their number 1 competitor. Scott McNealy, CEO of Sun Microsystems, candidly told one reporter that IBM should hire someone lousy. In what was believed to be a first-of-its-kind transaction, the search committee hired 2 recruiting firms in order to get the services of the 2 leading recruiters, Tom Neff of Spencer Stewart Management Consultants NV, and Jerry Roche of Heidrick & Struggles International Incorporated. In February I met with Burke and his fellow search committee member, Tom Murphy, then CEO of Cap Cities/ABC. Jim made an emphatic, even passionate pitch that the board was not looking for a technologist, but rather a broad-based leader and change agent. In fact, Burke's message was consistent throughout the whole process. At the time the search committee was established, he said, "The committee members and I are totally open-minded about who the new person will be and where he or she will come from. What is critically important is the person must be a proven, effective leader, one who is skilled at generating and managing change. Once again, I told Burke and Murphy that I really did not feel qualified for the position and that I did not want to proceed any further with the process. The discussion ended amicably and they went off, I presumed, to continue the wide sweep they were carrying out, simultaneously, with multiple candidates. What the experts had to say I read what the press, Wall Street, and the Silicon Valley computer visionaries and pundits were saying about IBM at that time. All of it certainly fueled my skepticism and, I believe, that of many of the other candidates. Most prominent were two guys who seemed to pop up everywhere. You looked, in print and on TV, Charles Morris and Charles Ferguson. They had written a book, Computer Wars, that took a grim view of IBM's prospects. They stated, there is a serious possibility that IBM is finished as a force in the industry. Bill Gates, the software tycoon whom everybody in the industry loves to hate, denies having said in an unguarded moment that IBM will fold in 7 years. But Gates may be right. IBM is now an also-ran in almost every major computer technology introduced since 1980. Traditional big computers are not going to disappear overnight, but they are old technology, and the realm in which they hold sway is steadily shrinking. The Brontosaurus moved deeper into the swamps when the mammals took over the forests, but one day it ran out of swamps. Their book concluded that the question for the present is whether IBM can survive. From our analysis thus far, it is clear that we think its prospects are very bleak. Morris and Ferguson wrote a longer, more technical, and even grimmer report on IBM and sold it to corporations and institutions for a few $1,000s per copy. Among others, it frightened a number of commercial banks that were lenders to IBM. Paul Carroll, IBM's beat reporter at the Wall Street Journal, published a book that year chronicling IBM's descent. In it, he said, the world will look very different by the time IBM pulls itself together, assuming it can pull itself together, and IBM will never again hold sway over the computer industry. Even The Economist, understated and reliable, over the span of 6 weeks, published 3 major stories and 1 lengthy editorial on IBM's problems. 2 questions still hang over the company. Its editors wrote, in an industry driven by rapid technological change and swarming with smaller, nimbler firms, can a company of IBM's size, however organized, react quickly enough to compete? And can IBM earn enough from expanding market segments such as computer services, software, and consulting to offset the horrifying decline in mainframe sales, from which it has always made most of its money? The answer to both questions may be no. And, said the usually sober economist, IBM's humiliation is already being viewed by some as a defeat for America. The decision. The turning point in my thinking occurred over President's Day weekend in February 1993. I was at my house in Florida, where I love to walk the beach, clearing and settling my mind. It's very therapeutic for me. During an hour's walk each day that weekend, I realized that I had to think differently about the IBM situation. What prompted my change of heart was what was happening at RJR Nabisco. As I noted in the introduction, it had become clear that KKR had given up on making its leveraged buyout work as planned. There were 2 reasons for this. First, as discussed in Brian Burrows and John Hellier's book Barbarians at the Gate, in the fury and madness of the bidding process in 1988, KKR overpaid for RJR Nabisco. This meant that despite achieving all of the restructuring objectives of the LBO, there simply wasn't enough operating leverage to produce the projected returns. Second, the operating returns from the tobacco business were under pressure as a result of a price war started by Philip Morris soon after the RJR Nabisco buyout. Philip Morris was simply following the advice of Ray Kroc, founder of McDonald's, who'd once said, when you see your competitor drowning, grab a fire hose and put it in his mouth. KKR obviously was working on an exit strategy. As I walked the beach that February, I decided I should be doing the same thing. And so, as much as anything else, the view that I would not be at RJR Nabisco too much longer was what got me thinking more about the IBM proposal. I called Vernon Jordan, the Washington attorney who was a longtime friend as well as a director of RJR Nabisco, and asked his advice. He confirmed my feeling that KKR was ready to move out of RJR Nabisco and that this phase of the company's tumultuous life was coming to an end. Also, it was clear that Jim Burke had already talked with Vernon, because Vernon knew I was on the IBM list. His Advice was, as usual, to the point. He said, IBM is the job you have been in training for since you left Harvard Business School. Go for it.